Hello, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to the Introduction into Product Design webinar by UX Academy. I'm really glad you could all join us today. Today, we're going to give you an overview of the product design course, as well as an overview into product design as a whole. I will shortly introduce one of the course instructors, Nick, who's going to take you into a little journey into product design. But before I do so, I just want to give you a brief overview into UX Academy and who we are and what we do. My name is Adrian Daniels, and I'm the Head of Growth and Partnerships at UX Academy. So let's get straight into it. Thank you for joining us tonight, or this afternoon, or morning, wherever you are. So, about UX Academy. So UX Academy is a successful training organization that's been running for just over 3 years now. It was established on the back of Mobile UX London, which is a successful UX design and best practice organization, which delivers events and monthly conferences in the London area and also online recently with UX Festival and etc. UX Academy was established because there was a demand for training in the UX and design area, and there was a need for upskilling various people such as designers and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, why should you kind of be interested in UX Academy? Now, there's so many reasons. Now, we will go into them a bit more later on in today's presentation, but I'm going to give you a quick overview. So you will get the opportunity to work on real life projects. So that means working with real stakeholders, real companies, real clients, which is great for your portfolio experience as well. You also get opportunity to get involved in live training. So we don't do pre-recorded videos here. We do live online training with interactive workshops, which is a very unique offering. You also get mentorship, which I will go into later on in this webinar. And also all our teachers are very experienced and have at least 7+ years experience in the disciplines of UX, product design, voice design, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now, all of our students have either graduated from UX Academy and gone on to work for top companies, such as some of the names you see on the screen: Microsoft, Amazon, BT, Sainsbury's, etc., or they've come from these top companies and they've trained with us. So many more reasons to get involved with UX Academy. I'm sure you guys are wondering, what tools do we use in the lessons? So we use a variety of tools such as Slack for team communication between students and lecturers. We also use Google Drive for storing information and sharing resources from the lectures. We also use Figma for prototyping and wireframing. We use Zoom for online classes, and Mira for whiteboarding, and InVision is also another option for prototyping. Now, who can get involved in product design course? So pretty much if you're completely new to the discipline, you can get involved in product design. Or if you're a UXer, a researcher, program manager, product designer, product manager, and strategist, digital and interaction designers can get involved. Data analysts can get involved. Software developers can get involved. If you're really keen into digital products, you can also get involved as well. Okay, so it's for everybody. All right. Now, you can see on the screen, we do have some testimonials from some of our recent students from our previous product design course. So Dan says he was so impressed with UX Academy. The content is expansive and instructors are extremely knowledgeable. I'll let you read the rest of it on the website. And also Kanisha here says, a good course for product UX UI beginners to get started. So you can visit the website myxacademy.com/testimonials. And you can read the rest of the testimonials for this course and other courses. But I don't want to bore you too much today because, of course, you've come here to get some fantastic value from Nick. So I'm going to bring him on shortly. Just before I do, I just want to let you guys know that if anyone is interested in the product design course, there's a special workshop offer for you today. You can visit the website myuxacademy.com/enroll, enter the code workshop12, and you'll be able to get a little discount from us, which is our gift from us to you for joining this webinar tonight. Now, without further ado, I'm going to introduce Nick onto the stream, and he's going to tell you more about product design. Thank you for joining us, Nick.
Thanks, Adrian.
I'll
It was
leave
really
you to
great
it.
to see. It was really great to see those testimonials. I hadn't actually seen them before. It was great to see what you received. Thank you, of course. It was really good.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
those students recently finished the course, and yeah, they really took it upon themselves to sort of step into that product designer mindset and that role. It was really great to see them sort of develop over that 6-week course.
Absolutely.
Cool. Hi everyone. So I'm Nick. I'm a course tutor at UX Academy. I've been with UX Academy for it's probably about sort of 5 or 6 months now, I think. And over that time, I've sort of continuously taught the Intro to Product Design course. So this webinar, I basically just wanted to talk through a little bit about me, a little bit about what we'll touch upon in the course, whilst also giving you a taster as to some of the work and some of the life cycle elements that a product designer would typically sort of be involved with. So a little more about me that kind of just validates why I'm qualified to give this course and to teach this course and to train everybody. I've previously formed the founding team of quite a major fintech startup. That one was called Loot. And then I've also worked on probably about 40 different brands, ranging from Gymshark in e-commerce all the way through to banking and financial services with NatWest. My most recent role was as the head of product design at RBS, working in their fintech division on the bow and metal products. I've also worked as a product designer for 10 plus years before that. So that was actually being very hands-on before I moved into the management side. And those roles within that sort of 10-year span have covered everything from sort of data analysis to research, all the way through to various design roles, including UI and UX, and obviously product design. Next slide, please, Adrian. Cool. So what's in the course? That's what you're all wondering. The Intro to Product Design course will take you through everything that you need to know, from software all the way through to UX principles, even touching upon some of the psychology that we push into our designs, all the way through to actually handing something over to a developer, getting a prototype that's valuable, be able to hand that to a developer so that they can develop it up and release your product or your feature, depending on how what you're working on. So we'll also cover idea validation and research, 2 other major steps in the product design kind of process. Next slide, please. So what is product design? Everybody throws that term around, but it's quite hard to knuckle down exactly what that means. So product design is all about creating an experience, being able to take an idea from that ideation all the way through to something tangible, not having to be reliant on other sort of specialisms or other members of the team to be able to deliver that. You've probably heard of UI design, which is user interface design, or UX design, which is user experience design. So a product designer encompasses all of that and a little bit more. A product designer almost bridges that gap between what would typically be a product manager's remit and a user researcher's remit, and encompasses all of those into one role. Next slide, please. So the job titles or the roles highlighted in green is everything that would be encompassed in a product designer role. So it would be a merger of all of these different roles, not necessarily doing them as in depth or as specialist as if these roles were standalone, but definitely being able to do them at adequate level to be able to hand off a project or take it from ideation through to something tangible. It's worth noting it's becoming more and more common for startups to hire product designers, just because if you think about a larger company, they've got more of a budget to hire individual specialisms and to have large teams for research, for UI design, for project management. Whereas the startups, they're more focused on getting the most efficient, most encompassed role and way of delivering a feature. So that's typically why you see product design roles at smaller companies or startups. But it is becoming more and more common that larger organizations do dive into that product designer, just because you get a well-rounded view of the life cycle of designing and delivering a feature. Next slide, please. There we are. Thank you. So how do product designers normally work? I've mentioned that they are well-rounded in terms of covering UI design, UX design, a little bit of research and product management as well. So this is called a cross-functional team, and this is the typical structure that a product designer would work in. An example of a cross-functional team, it would contain a designer, so a product designer, a product manager who brings the sort of business side or the stakeholder management side, and then engineers. So engineers would be the actual developers who would code your solution, get it ready for maybe an app release or a website release. And potentially you might have a QA, so that's quality assurance. So you might have somebody just checking the quality of the code before it goes out. Those specialisms or those roles form what is called a cross-functional team. Now, a cross-functional team, it's typically highlighted from the Spotify way of working. They introduced this into the kind of landscape, and it was very widely adopted because of that. A cross-functional team would typically have a goal. So it would have a company objective that that team is all aligned on, that they're all working to. So an example of what a cross-functional team might be working towards, their goal might be to increase the number of people using the app. So actually opening the app day to day. So all of the features, everything that they would define and design would be around hitting or achieving that goal, to getting people to open the app and use the app more. So that cross-functional team might be called the retention team, and that would be their objective. That's how they're structured. This isn't to say that this is the way that all product designers work, but this is definitely becoming the more and more common way. And especially in the companies that I've worked at, this is the setup that you typically see. Next slide, please. So the way that they work, product designers, when they're in this cross-functional team, is by following what's called the double diamond approach. Now, the double diamond approach combines IDEO thinking and design psychology thinking, and uses divergence and convergence techniques to essentially take a problem statement through 4 different phases. So you think at the beginning, you've got lots of different ideas. You need a way to sort of map them out, and then you would converge them back into something a little bit more tangible that you could work into what's called an MVP, so a minimum viable product. Next slide, please. So to go into what the double diamond approach is, just in a little bit more depth, it consists of 4 main stages: the discovery stage, the definition stage, the development stage, and the delivery stage. So the discovery stage typically involves research. It involves understanding any data that you've currently got. If you've got a website at the moment, that data might be things like how many visits, how many views are you getting on that website? It might be things like how many people are dropping off your website, so not making a sale if it was an e-commerce site. It might even be as simple as speaking to a couple of your users. If you've got an app, for example, you might want to have a phone call conversation with them to understand exactly what they like about your product or don't like about that product. From that, that is essentially your discovery. So you might go through various interviews, various research to understand what is either wrong with your product or how you could improve it in some way. At that point, you get to the definition stage, and this is all about ideation. This is where you start to map out or turn those discoveries, those insights that you've understood at that earlier stage into something a little bit more tangible, something that you could begin to map out into a feature or something that a user could use. And when you do that, you typically think about it in terms of user journeys, user maps, or even sort of card sorting exercises to go back to those users to say, these are our ideas. What do you think? How do you place them? Then you would move on after you've got that feedback from customers and mapped out that initial journey. Then you'd move on to the development stage. Now, the development stage is what you typically think of when people say to you, what does a designer do? And that involves sketches, it involves paper prototypes, it involves wireframing, it involves architecture design, and the actual sort of UI visual design. Now, obviously, you can see that if you just think about a UI designer or even a UX designer, they fit into that development bracket. When you think of a product designer, they encompass this whole process. So that just gives you a bit of an idea as to how much a product designer's role and remit encompasses. So after you've sketched some ideas out, you've maybe done some wireframes, you've maybe led that into a bit more of a high fidelity design, so something that looks very polished, you might want to then deliver it or do some testing on it. So after you've got that prototype, you would take that to customers and ask them for feedback. From that feedback, it'll either go one way or two ways. It'll either go, yes, this is absolutely brilliant. This is exactly the feature or improvement that I need. Or it would go the other way and they say, oh no, this isn't quite right. I think you should adjust this. And they provide some feedback on it. The reason this process is called the double diamond approach is because you can go back and forwards through it. It's a constant sort of iterative loop. So after your users are comfortable and happy with the proposed prototype that you've shown them, they're happy with what you've provided, you might then have to prep it for development. And so this would be making sure that the images are exportable, making sure that the actual designs are pixel perfect, that they are measured and that they are prepped in a way that a developer could pick it up and start developing, so actually coding the UI design out. So that's the double diamond approach. Hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea as to what a product designer encompasses. Next slide, please. Cool. So what skills do you need to become a product designer? The biggest one, and I always put it on top, is empathy. You have to put your customers or your users at the center of all of your decisions. You can assume what they might do in certain situations, but then you have to ask them, you have to test it with them. You wouldn't want to get to, if you were creating a startup, you wouldn't want to spend millions of pounds creating an initial app, for example, only to figure out that it wasn't exactly what your customers want, or they used it in a certain way. So that's why empathy and even behavioral psychology has to sort of work its way into your design process. Both of which, there are methods to sort of convey this and to teach you this from a product designer called the designer's mindset that we do touch upon in the course. Other areas are design principles. Typically, these are sort of UX and UI principles, and obviously understanding the business needs. There's one side of things to take the customer's needs to understand exactly what the ideal scenario is for them. But sometimes you have to strip that back a little bit. You have to work backwards, understanding exactly what is feasible from a business point of view. And that's something that the product designer has to do as well. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to take you through what is called a UX audit. So this is quite a common method that product designers use when evaluating a design. They break it down by different areas. And if you were in a large organization, you might have individual people evaluating it from a different perspective. So I'm going to show you how the NatWest app in this case was broken down by various specialisms. And then I'm going to indicate at the end what a product designer would evaluate it. So a UI designer, they might look at this design and pick out things like the gray and the whites, the colors aren't that exciting. There isn't as much definition between the sort of cells and the background. The icon at the top right, that's a little bit ambiguous. I'm not really sure exactly what that means. Even things like, is the logo at the top, is it relevant? Do you need that on this page? Could we remove that, open up some space, perhaps introduce some white space there? So that's typically what a UI designer would bring to the table. Definitely looking at sort of visual design, just the sort of components that you could see. Next slide, please. Ooh, I think the slides got a little muddled. Can I just get the next one, please? Perfect, that's the one. Oh, yeah. So at that point, you might ask a UX designer to evaluate this same design. So I've marked in purple how they might evaluate the design, just so that you can identify how it might be different from a visual designer or a user interface designer. So the UX designer might bring in some psychology laws. So they might say the law of proximity, for example, which is how, well, in this case, the balance and the account details, along with the available balance that seem to be disconnected due to their position. So at the moment, there's too much of a gap between the £58.30 whopping balance and the available balance just beneath that. Whereas typically you would want those two associated because one is an explainer, a tooltip for that main balance. Other areas that they might review is things like, do things look clickable? What's the accessibility like for people who maybe have hard of sight or slight color blindness? How do they view this design? So that's the type of view that the UX designer might bring, that sort of extra layer of psychology that they bring in. Cool. The user researcher, they might bring in something else. They might start to think, okay, how important are all of these functions, all of these cells that we've got laid out? We've got the transactions, we've got the payments, we've got the direct debits, we've got the standing orders. Which one does the user want to see first? Which one are they most going to interact with? So they might say, should we run a card sorting exercise to define the hierarchy of this? They might also say that based on the user research that they've carried out, that actually all customers understand what available balance is, so they don't even need the available balance tooltip. Next slide, please. So the product manager at this point might come in and bring a little bit more of a sort of business point of view into this. So they might sort of begin to question like why the user wants to see certain information here. In this case, why is the balance at the top? Is that the main thing that they want to see? What's the business objective of having that available balance in there as well? By having that tooltip, is that leading less customers to customer support because they don't confuse what that function is? So they begin to bring in that sort of more business sort of overview of how you would perform a UX audit. Next slide, please. Cool. So then when you think about it from a product designer's point of view, they might bring in another aspect. So you can see how all the different aspects are adding up until you get this sort of full UX audit, this full overview of how this this individual design could be broken down and improved and evaluated. So the product designer might bring that extra layer. They might highlight the payments and the direct debits and the standing orders. They might begin to question whether customers would even know the difference between them. At that point, they might hand that question over to a user researcher who would then perform a test to evaluate with those users whether they understand what the differences are. But as you can see, all the different levels are being brought into this. So then you get the full UX audit overview. Next slide, please. So in terms of what a product designer does, they have to have this full overview of all of it. I've highlighted all of those comments in green because that's typically what you'd expect the product design to pick up on. They'd typically be expected to evaluate this design from all aspects, from the UI through to UX, through to sort of what they could test from the research point of view, all the way through to the business side of things from the PM, whilst adding their own layer on top of it of evaluation. Brilliant. Next step, please. So I just wanted to close with one slide that I think is always quite powerful. So if you're on the fence about sort of taking this product designer course, this intro to product design, I would always just sort of look at which companies out there have been founded by product designers. This sort of gives you an idea of the mindset that a product designer learns and that they bring with them when they approach problems and problem solving, all the way through to sort of the founders from Airbnb, YouTube, Instagram. They were all product designers at some point, and they have obviously taken the experience and the mindset that they've learned being a designer and being a product designer into the actual business case and have been able to set up very, very user-centric companies. Brilliant. I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to hand back over to Adrian now. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick, for taking us through a journey into product design. I hope you guys have been getting great value from tonight so far. Now, what we're going to do now, everybody, is we are going to take a look at some of our students' past work. So you guys are really in for a treat. This is something we haven't really done before, so please stay tuned. So me and Nick are going to give you a little commentary on one of our students' piece of work. So let's get started. So the students who took place in the previous product design course, they were given a real life client, and this client called Abodely. Now this client Abodely, they had a rental platform for the elderly market. So that was the idea behind the business, and they were given a project brief to be able to achieve this product within 5 weeks. So as you can see here, the product brief was they needed to gain insights from the discovery research. They had to solve a problem and a hypothesis. They had to create a walkthrough of the design process, show evidence of the iteration based on insights from the research, and then they had to provide samples of the design artifacts, and they had to also present a demo of the latest prototype and then some next steps. So we're going to show you an overview of most of this today. So please stay tuned. Stick around, guys. This is going to be awesome. So Aboli is once again, it's a home sharing network which connects young renters to elderly homeowners, and home sharers, are offered affordable rents from hosts and can be offered more affordable rents if they pay in kind deeds. So kind deeds, for example, if I was staying at an elderly lady's place, and if I did good things such as helping her with cooking, helping her with the cleaning, helping her to walk her dog, etc., in exchange for that, I would get, a free pass to, live in her apartment or a house, which is a fantastic idea. And this is what the mission of this startup set out to achieve. And the target market for this project was elderly homeowners aged between 50 to 75 and renters aged between 18 to 34 from London. So this is a real life client, guys. It's not something we made out or we pulled out from the sky. There's actually a real life client that the student had to work for. And this student was called Kanisha, okay? Just if you guys didn't know. And then the mission was by utilizing underused urban space through empty bedrooms, Aboli aimed to create affordable housing whilst reducing loneliness and ultimately improving social cohesion. So this was the aim of this project. So we're going to walk you through what Kanisha did to solve this problem. So they had to first carry out some competitive research. So as you may be able to see in the screen, you may be able to see some of the biggest names in online rentals, so such as Zoopla, Rightmove, you have Body and Spare Room, Move Bubble. So these are some of the biggest platform when it comes to renting properties in the UK. If you're from America and you're listening to us, you may recognize Zillow as well on the screen. Okay, Nick, did you want to add anything in terms of competitive research, what a student may expect to get involved in?
Yeah, Aboli was a really interesting task, just simply because it had two different distinct user groups. You had the younger generation, so the maybe 18 to 25-year-old that was really looking for that sort of low-cost rental, maybe on like the outside of a city. And then you had the other, almost like persona, where we did end up building personas, that was the slightly elderly person. So maybe somebody that was 60 to sort of 75 that was looking for a little bit more companionship. And so definitely the competitive research side of things was so valuable because you had to almost define it from two different aspects. You couldn't just look at the Airbnbs. You had to also sort of look at it from almost sort of admin panels, almost sort of a way for the customer to interact, but also go through almost like a Tinder style matching, because these people needed to get on. And so while here we've got some competitive research, I want to just sort of emphasize the fact that we did go deeper than obviously just sort of looking at these apps. We really pulled them apart. We evaluated them. We tried to see how much we could use and where we could draw inspiration from.
Yeah. Okay. So that's competitive research, just a very high level overview of this aspect. Affinity mapping. So what happens is the student had to go out and after doing their research with their target market or the target audience, they had to find out what the patterns were in terms of on the outcomes of the research. So some of the patterns that came up were they felt priced out of the market by London rental prices and happy for the renter to do tasks like shopping. I like my space, but also like to know people are around. It would be Grant. Okay, I can't read that one. I'm going to leave that one. And willing to help with cooking, cleaning, dishes, and doing the groceries. So these are the patterns that Kanisha picked up when she was conducting her research. Nick, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to the affinity mapping exercise.
Yeah, of course. So to give everyone a bit more background, when we were running the last intro to product design course, we were actually at the height of the sort of lockdown. And so obviously as a part of the course, we asked everybody to go out, interview people. Typically you do that in person, in public, which obviously proved a little bit difficult. Obviously sort of the UX Academy team were on help and everybody was able to sort of produce some of those interviews and really learn from their customer base. I think one thing whenever we do affinity mapping and user interviews, as I always ask the product designers, was there anything that sort of amazed them? And that's exactly what we want. We want them to break their assumptions. We want them to hear from customers that
Mhm.
say stuff that you've never have thought of, because then it means that we're adding that value from doing those interviews. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So there you have it, guys. Affinity mapping. And let's have a look at user personas. So um, during research, the student Kanisha picked up patterns, but also she also had to think about the customer in a bit more detail. So she had to think about what kind of customer did Kanisha have to target in order to make this product a success. So you can see here there are two user personas on the screen, and you can see each person is unique in terms of their age, their gender, their likes and their dislikes, and what their lifestyle is like and what they're looking for, and the type of things that they do. Nick, did you want to add anything to user personas?
I think you summed up really well there,
Mhm.
Adrian. I think the best thing about creating user personas is you can segment your user base so that you know exactly who you're designing for, how they will react in certain situations,
Mhm.
and that's why performing the affinity mapping and finding that, we call it the essence, which is the common thread through all of those sort of snippets of information that you're getting from customers. Then we can form them into personas, and this is almost, I always think that personas are probably like the core of when you're designing. You have to, everything has to loop back to it. It's so valuable. Yeah.
Thank you, Nick. And let's move on to the next one. So this is problem and hypothesis. So um, Kanisha had to set out to achieve this problem. She had to solve this problem, sorry. So it says here, we believe that if we provide a channel for elderly homeowners to share their humble abode to young renters through a mobile app, the lack of affordable housing amongst young Londoners and social isolation and loneliness amongst elderly homeowners can improve. So as you can see here, the problem and hypothesis sets out to, I would say, kill two birds with one stone. So we're solving the problem of people needing a place to stay, and we're also solving the problem of elderly people needing someone to help them. So these two things brought this together, and as a result, a Bowley is the solution. And what you can see on the screen now is user flow. So you may not be able to see everything from your screen, but it's a very detailed overview of the entire process in terms of how the digital product is going to work. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to it, Nick. Just give a little bit of a summary.
Just to really say that, obviously, in the past couple of slides that Adrian's shown, that's just a snippet of what we sort of teach the product designers in making. Obviously, sort of we touch upon all of these aspects, everything that they'll need to take that ideation, take that problem statement all the way through to even here, like committing to the user flow, to interacting with customers, to actually finishing off the visual design. All the way through that is provided. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Let's move on to the other slide. So after Kanisha's hard work, this was the outcome that she got. So this is what you can see is the final design of her prototype for a Bowley. So what you can see here are the different screens that's been designed. So from the launch screen to the welcome screen, and then the setup wizard, as you can see, which she's outlining the process in terms of signing up for an Aboli account. And then if you see in the next screen here, which I'm going to show you just now, this is an example of what the app looks like once a user has signed up for account and they start engaging and they start using the app. So that's just a quick overview of the final design. There are a lot more slides. There are a lot more. It's a lot more to this. There's a lot more um, images, etc. But we're just going to keep this brief for the sake of this webinar. Nick, did you want to add anything in terms of what's expected in terms of a final design for a prototype?
Yeah, of course. I mean, just to say that, how good does this look? Like, this is the level of fidelity that sort of designers on the course were producing, and we would help them sort of get it to this level so that this would form a really, really strong portfolio piece, so that
Yeah.
they could then go out and showcase that to potential companies that are looking to hire them.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, yeah, just how good does this look after essentially a 6-week course, covering all of those steps to go from not having any experience to this is pretty impressive, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks really good. Looks awesome. Well, there you have it, guys. This is a real world project example, and I hope you guys enjoyed this segment of the presentation. Now, without further ado, we are gonna segue into the Q&A section. So once again, this is now the time for the audience, that's you guys, wherever you are in the world, to share your questions that you may have for us, whether you're on YouTube or whether you're on Facebook. Now, I can see here that we have some questions from earlier on, so I'm going to go into those questions, and Nick, I'm sure you'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, of course. Far away.
Awesome. Excellent. So Dennis said earlier on, can this process also be related to fashion design? So I believe she was talking about the product design process.
I've never actually worked in fashion design, but I think what's key to sort of highlight as a product designer is the mindset that we teach you. A couple of the examples that we ask students to work through are not actually related to actual sort of making something visual. We make sure that we instill that mindset to them that is all about sort of breaking the constraints around what they know and trying to sort of come up with that sort of blue sky, that best solution for their problem.
Mm-hmm.
So I think now that, I mean, the fact that I've worked in this industry as a designer and had that mindset for so long, I definitely see how I view different problems in the world differently. So I think it can translate, but maybe not the actual high fidelity visual design. Maybe that bit can't.
Excellent. Thank you for covering that question for me, Nick. So we're going to move on to the next question. And that comes from Francesca Mula. She says, could you please repeat the real difference between a UX designer and a product designer? I think this was bound to come up, wasn't this?
Definitely. There's always a bit of discrepancy. I don't want to say confusion, but discrepancies. I think it comes down to the reason there are discrepancies is because some companies that want to hire UX designers or want to hire product designers use the term UX designer or use the term product designer when perhaps the role is exactly the same. But what it comes down to is product designer encompasses everything from coming up with that idea all the way through to creating something that looks like a finished app. You've done the research, you've taken the business considerations into account, and you've mocked up something that is of a very high design. When it comes to a UX designer, they would typically take research from a research team. They might be involved with that research, depending on where you work. They would be given the sort of initial project by maybe a stakeholder of the business or maybe a product manager. They would then work with the researcher or maybe complete some research, and then they would create some wireframes. And normally at that point, after they've created those wireframes, that's when they hand it over to somebody else. They would typically hand it over to a UI designer, the user interface designer then, to finish it off, to animate it up, and to hand it over themselves to a developer. So there you can see essentially a UX designer creates a fraction of what the product designer does. Hopefully that answers your question.
That was quite in depth. I hope, Francesca, you got value from that. Thanks again for your question. So we're going to move on to the next question. Just give me a moment. Okay. And Francesca also asked, must a product designer be specialized in one business field or not? And that's an interesting one.
I don't think so. I think when you say sort of business area, do you mean sort of industry? I definitely don't think industry. I think once you've got that mindset, it's very easy, and especially at the moment, because product designs is such a hot role that they want in their business, it's very easy to move between different industries. I've had friends that have started in social media and are now working in banking. I've had friends that are working, that were working at sort of food companies that are now working in e-commerce, so places like Amazon. So it's definitely easy to interchange once you've got that mindset and the skill set.
Awesome. Thanks for covering that one up, Nick. We're going to move on to the next question. And Jess asks, does everyone on the course have the same clients, or can you pick from a few or your own? So I'm going to answer that question. So normally at UX Academy, Jess, we tend to have a range of clients on the course, but for the last course that we did on product design, we decided to do something different, just to see how it went, and it was a success to see how different students went about the project. So by allowing the students to focus on one client, we were able to see, a range of different projects, which was nice. I mean, from the same client. So it was always interesting when it comes to presenting to the class or presenting to the actual client. So it gave the client a lot of variety to pick from and a lot of different options. So the answer is usually you do have options of clients to work with. We give you the options, of course, but it's not very often that the whole class would just be working with one particular client. Okay. So let's move on to the next one. So we have Gary, and Gary asks Nick, what tool would you recommend for UI design? We currently use Adobe.
Cool. I'm going to selfishly plug a Medium post that I wrote recently. I actually wrote one about the best sort of design tools to use and why, in which I covered Adobe. The thing with Adobe is you obviously typically buy the Adobe package. And so it's becoming more and more common for companies to trim a little bit of that cost and to actually work in Figma. Figma or Sketch are the two probably sort of emerging leaders. They definitely have given Adobe a bit of a sort of run for their money. A couple of years back, everyone would have said Adobe, but obviously because they sort of had that base in Photoshop and sort of photo manipulation, it's meant that Figma and Sketch have been able to branch into creating a design platform just for apps and websites. Figma is probably the tool of preference for most designers at the moment, purely because it's slightly cheaper. I think for a single license for a user, it's something like 20 quid when you have, after you've bought the main admin to add another person, it's about 20 quid. But the fact that it's completely remote, so you are able to work on projects at the same time as your colleagues if you're working in a team. And I think just for that benefit, it gives it that slight edge on Sketch and Adobe. I previously worked in Sketch. I used to be a big advocate for it. But since joining a new role at the beginning of this year, I'm all for Figma now. Yeah.
That was an interesting answer. Thanks for sharing that, Nick. And we'll make sure that everyone that's signed up for the webinar today will be able to get a link to Nick's article. I'm sure he'll appreciate that. All right, moving on, guys. So let's go to the next question. Next question we have here is from Philippa. She asks, thank you for this presentation. Do you offer practical advice and guidance to students trying to find their first job in product? So yeah, Philippa, so I'm going to answer this one next. So yeah, Philippa, we do offer this as part of the product design course. So during the course, you will get the opportunity to receive career advice, portfolio advice, CV advice, etc. throughout the course of the course. And during the course, you'd also receive mentorship from our instructors. So that's weekly mentorships. And after this Q&A, I'll go a little bit more into what mentorship is all about. So thank you again for your question. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So Matilda asks, is this course only for beginners? What if you already dabbled in product design? And Matilda, I'll answer that one. The answer to that question is yes. So the course is for beginners. It's for everyone, as I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation. If you just joined, welcome. I hope you're doing well. So the course is for beginners. It's for everyone. Anyone can get involved in product design. However, if you do have some sort of design or development or technical background, IT background, etc., it would give you a slight edge, but it's not completely essential for you to get involved in the course. Okay. Right. Next one. So this one seems to be for you, Nick. So Naya asks, as a 3D product designer with a lot of this mindset already, what do I need to make the jump to digital product design, please? Maybe Nick, you can answer this in a short.
I think you'd have to sort of evaluate what skill sets you need to improve. As Adrian said, the mentorship is there on this course. I still think even though you're a 3D product designer, we'd be able to give you a slightly different take on how you approach product design. There's always more to learn. So yeah, I think evaluating your skill set, evaluating where you need to maybe improve certain areas could be hugely beneficial. That obviously the mentorship will help.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Nick. Right. So next one is from Ashanta Abdul Rof. So she asks, would this process also work for physical products? Are people who design physical products also called product designers? Very good question. Nick, I'll hand over to you.
Completely. Yeah, that's the reason why product designers are called product designers, because it stemmed from the fact that we used to design physical products and now we're moving more into digital products. The mindset is very much the same. So definitely it can be applied to both disciplines. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for clearing that one up. And let's move on to the next question. And okay, well, we have loads of questions just popped up. Let me just have just lost where I was. Here we go. Here we go. And we have a question from Hint. I think this is a YouTube channel. How is product design process different when working with a software product versus hardware product?
You'd have mostly the same steps. They just might consist of different timelines and different sort of people. So, for example, working with a software product, you have what's called a QA at the end after you've designed and developed your product. You might hand this over to a digital QA who basically runs code to check that nothing breaks with your app. Versus that against a sort of physical product, physical QA, that might be someone that's testing your product in a lab. It might be somebody that's testing it on maybe a conveyor belt that is checking that the materials are stuck together. It's just a slightly different take on it. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks again, Nick. Okay, and we're starting to run out of time, guys, but we're going to keep going for just for a little while. We're going to try and get through as many questions as we can. You will receive some follow-up emails after this webinar, either today or tomorrow. But just to remind you, if you want to get in touch, if we don't get time to answer your question, feel free to get in touch with me at adrian@myuxacademy.com or visit our website, myuxacademy.com. Right, let's move on to the next one. Okay. And Matthew asks a great question. He asks, great talk, thanks. What are some of the business metrics you would be typically expected to measure as a product designer? So over to you, Nick.
Cool. So we typically call these the pirate metrics because when you put the first letter of all of them together, they spell R. And that is things like that's things like activation, acquisition, retention, referral, and revenue. So those are typically the metrics that you would think about. But if you go a level deeper into that, we will start to look at data such as, I think I mentioned earlier, the number of users your website's getting, your conversion rate based on maybe a sign-up flow, even right through to sort of how many customers are churning. So you might have a product, but how are people using you? Are they only using you once a month? Are they using you every day? Which I think most people at the moment are with TikTok. That seems to be the app that everyone is using. Their retention rates have just gone through the roof. So those are the type of metrics that we begin to play in. From a design point of view, it might be things like usability metrics. So does a customer tap a button that isn't actually a button? How much time do they spend on a screen? Do they encounter any errors when they're going through a flow? Because then we can sort of begin to learn, well, actually, we've asked them for a password, but we haven't told them the password requirements. So things like that, those are the type of metrics. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Okay, I'm going to take a few more questions and then we're going to start to bring this to a close. Nia asks another good question. In terms of job availability, is there more demand for UX or product designer, please?
Yeah, this is a really interesting one. So product designer encompasses UX. There are probably more product designer roles out there, I'd say, but as with the landscape of sort of jobs, it's changing all the time. I would say if you want to sort of foolproof yourself, become a product designer, because then you can apply for UX design jobs and product design jobs. If you just specialize in UX, you're almost limiting yourself to just one area.
Yeah, that's true. And yeah, let's move on to the next one. Massimiliano Bolondi, I hope I pronounced your name correct. He asks, how much does a product designer earn? So maybe Nick, you can probably discuss some salary expectations, perhaps, maybe entry level?
Yeah, of course, of course.
Yeah.
It's worth noting that product design, in terms of salary benchmarking, loads of recruitment firms every year bring out white papers to say these are benchmarks for salaries. And product design and developers are always creeping up. I think over the past like 5 years, the base salary has gone up by about £10,000. So that just proves how much it's going up by. I'd say junior. So when you're first starting out, you're probably looking at about between 25 and 35k. And then I'd say all the way up to, if you're a senior, you could be looking at about 75 to 80k. And then beyond that, it can begin to get uncapped, because if you go to work for a startup and you're paid in shares, normally a product designer is one of the first hires a startup makes, because they're able to take that product from idea all through to inception. In which case, you could be involved with a company like Facebook or Deliveroo that eventually builds a product and gets really big, and you've got the shares. So it can be uncapped as well.
Okay, excellent. Okay, just a couple more, and we're going to be leaving. Nia asks another good question. Do you need to get a certification or accredited education in product design to get a job? Like, do I need to do a course that's something I could put my CV on, or can I switch without it?
If I'm completely honest, I think when I look at when somebody applies, I always ask for a portfolio. I think a portfolio is more key for me than seeing their CV. I think accreditation is definitely having that base, that solid fundamentals. But I definitely think that courses like this are performing better than university courses. Universities at the moment are not equipped to deliver sort of specialist product design or UX design courses, whereas we've crafted this course especially for that. But I think having a strong portfolio is key, and that's one of the things you'll be able to take away from this course.
Awesome, excellent. Okay, just a couple more. Christian asks, is the total cost £200 or £800? I see the discount was for about £20. Okay, Christian, so the total cost of the course is £800, but you can reserve your place for the course for £199. Okay, there's £199 deposit. Now, when you use the coupon code, it should give you, you will be entitled to a 12% discount of the entire course. Now, it will take a fraction of that from the deposit, but then when you're coming to pay for the entirety of the course, more discount would then come from that. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, I think we've had an answer to this question already. Are the roles of a UX designer and a product designer separate, or do they often overlap? I'm just going to quickly answer that by saying, at the end of this presentation, I have another gift for you, so that should answer your question. Okay, and let's go into a couple more before we wrap up. Nuvis asks, what percentage of entrepreneur students do you get? I'm interested in working on my own projects, but I am not sure if this is focused on people looking to work for final clients. We'll both take this, Nick. So Nuvis, this course is welcome for everyone. So we do attract entrepreneurs. We've had entrepreneurs come on our previous product design course, for example, e-commerce entrepreneurs, etc. Whether you're an entrepreneur or not, it's for you. Did you want to add anything else, Nick?
Yeah, I think a lot of the people that came on our course had that as sort of an end goal. They might have been working and wanted to get a job as a UX designer or a product designer first, and then move into sort of setting their own thing up. That's definitely the approach that I took. I know that I wanted to sort of get the fundamentals of product design work for a couple of years as a product designer before setting up my own thing. And so I'd say it equips both sides, and I'd say our course is pretty much split. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And okay, let's take one more. Okay. Is this the one we answered? I don't think you've answered this one, right? Okay, no. Anki asks, as a product designer, do you think you can build a successful freelance career remotely, or what do you recommend for getting started? I think this is an important question, Nick, especially as UX Festival, which took place last week, talked a lot about remote working and the pandemic situation that we're in right now. How important do you think this is? Do you think it's possible?
Definitely, especially in the current climate. More and more companies are beginning to hire remote freelancers and contractors. So I definitely think that it's going to go that way. The shift is going to become more and more remote, especially as I can see there are a lot of fans of Figma in the comments, but especially with the likes of those tools, it basically means that you might have a couple of touch points with clients or customers every now and then. Can even be a phone call or a Zoom call, but definitely forming that sort of freelance remote base. Yeah, it's definitely going that way.
Excellent. Okay, and let's wrap up with this question, Nick. What's the difference between a product architect and a product designer? Thank you, Nishant, for your question.
Cool. That's one of those things that it's one of those roles that it could be interchangeable. It's hard to define exactly what a product architect does versus what a product designer does. If I would see that role, what I would typically think a product architect does, or an architect designer, they would be focused on sitemaps. So how the navigation works, they'd be focused on the user flows, how everything sort of pieces together, but they wouldn't be as focused on the actual visual design or handing over to developers or necessarily working with the research as much. They'd just be focused on how you actually build that function.
Okay, and having said that, that brings the Q&A section to an end. I hope you guys enjoyed that and got some great value from that. We can see in the comment section that a lot of you really did enjoy and learn from this presentation and this Q&A so far. Okay, guys. So now moving on to the final part of the webinar. So again, why should you choose UX Academy? Why do this course? Okay. Now I mentioned at the start of this webinar, if you weren't here before, that there are 4 main reasons why you should get involved with UX Academy. So that's for the real life projects, that's for experienced teachers, that's for the mentorship opportunities, and that's for the flexibility of the training. Now, the course is a 6-week course. It's going to be live online with interactive sessions and workshops. So you wouldn't be getting like on-demand pre-recorded videos. You're going to get another level of value with the course. Okay. It's only 1 week. Sorry, it's only 1 evening a week, especially if you're in the UK, or if you're in America or other time zones, as we have students from around the world that may be in a different time zone, but it's only 1 lesson a week. So if you work full-time, if you study full-time, this is still perfect for you. Now, it's pandemic proven for those wanting to upskill or switch careers. So whatever your situation is, whether you're looking to switch careers, whether you're looking to start a new career, whether you're looking to upskill in your existing career as a UX designer, etc., this is for you, or move into UX design or product design as a software developer, etc., this is also for you. Okay, it's pandemic proof, as this we have been running our courses online since March, and we've seen almost 50 students graduate with us, or maybe even more. Okay, you will be graduating with a professional portfolio. You'll also be receiving a certificate from us at the end of the course. Okay, and you will become job ready for entry roles. So Nick, as far as the entry role is concerned, I'm sure you'll be looking at roles like maybe junior product designer, junior UX designer, junior UI designer, because product designer covers a lot more of the disciplines. Yeah, perfect. Okay, you'll also get the opportunity to work in teams, guys. So team working skills will be developed. If you prefer to work independently, we'll also give you opportunity to do that. But at the end of the day, this is important for your employers and your clients to see that you have the ability to work with other people and also stakeholders, which is the real life clients you'll be working with. You're also going to get access to Nick. Okay, you're going to get access to our other instructor who will be on the course as well as CV, portfolio support, career support. You'll also get post-course work experience and networking opportunities. We've got students who have graduated with us who are still doing work experience with us this year, which is fantastic, even after the course. So we will give you more work experience opportunities if you want, because we want you to get the full value of the course, and we want you to be able to build up your CV and your portfolio to a level where you can get a job. And we have actually had students get hired on the back of presenting to their clients. So at the end of the course, you will have opportunity to present to your actual client. And if you're lucky, you may get hired, which we've seen in the past. So, there's a lot of opportunities at UX Academy. And last but not least, weekly mentorship. So I'm going to go into this a little bit more. On the right, on the bottom right, you can see a little screenshot of one of the Zoom sessions. So this is just to show that we do online sessions. Let's go into this. So mentorship. Now, what can you expect in mentorship? So this is a weekly 30-minute slot with your team. Okay, so 30 minutes, you're going to get the opportunity to have weekly meetings with your mentor. This will be ability for you to address any project progress and remove any blockers. You have the opportunity to ask any follow-up questions or course tools on methodologies, and you'll also have the opportunity to discuss UX or product design life and get great career advice. So this is what you can expect in mentorship, and you can expect this from week 2 onwards from the product design course. So it's a session that comes after your lessons during the week, where it's a time slot which is suitable for yourself and your instructor. So it's a appointment basis. You book an appointment with your instructor, and then they will show up, and you will show up with your team and get a lot of value from that. Having said that, guys, I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Hope you enjoyed the webinar. Just like to remind you, there is another chance to sign up for the product design course, which starts on 28th of September. Nick Spiller will be your trainer, your lead trainer, and will be teaching you through the first few weeks. Just use the code workshop12 to sign up, and visit www.myuxacademy.com/enroll to reserve your place. If you decide to change your mind from signing up to the course, you will get a refund on your deposit before the course starts, or if you can't make it anymore, we'll give you a refund anyway. Okay, so use the code workshop12. You may see a little bit of a discount, but don't worry, you will get a full 12% discount off the entire course. Okay, and the course price is £800. Okay, and I promised I had a final bonus for you guys. So if you visit myuxacademy.com, visit our website. If you click on the UX Insights button, we have got some bonus material for you. So this is a blog that we put together: UX design versus product design. So all of you that are wondering what is the difference between UX design and product design, go to myuxacademy.com and go to UX Insights, and you can get the blog there absolutely free. We've done a comparison between UX design and product design. So any questions, that's all going to be done. Having said that, I'm Adrian Daniels, and I'm the head of growth and partnerships at UX Academy. And we also have Nick Spiller, who's been a great sport of us. Thank you again, Nick, for joining us tonight.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.